I used to believe the hardest part of dying would be letting go. I was wrong. The hardest part was standing in my own living room, still breathing, and hearing my children argue over what they'd do with my house after I was gone. They thought I was asleep upstairs. My doctor had warned them my heart wasn't doing well, and I'd been spending more time in bed. They assumed I couldn't hear a thing. I'll list it the week after the funeral. My oldest son, Daniel, said with a laugh that didn't sound like the boy I had raised. "No point letting it sit." His sister, Melissa, answered before anyone else could. "Just make sure Dad's ridiculous request isn't in the paperwork. There's no way we're giving that old truck to some stranger." The room filled with quiet chuckles. Someone poured another glass of wine. Someone asked who wanted the grandfather clock. Another person wanted my fishing rods. Not one of them asked what I wanted. Not one of them wondered if I was scared. And the one wish I had carried in my heart for almost 20 years. They called it ridiculous. I leaned against the bedroom door, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped the photograph I was holding. It was a faded picture of a young man standing beside me outside an old diner. His smile was bigger than mine. His arm rested across my shoulders like we had the whole world ahead of us. His name wasn't written on the back. It never had to be. I whispered it anyway. Thomas. For the first time in years, I realized that blood didn't always make a family. Sometimes a stranger did. My name is Arthur Bennett. I'm 76 years old, and this is the story of how my own children ignored the last thing I ever asked of them, and how someone they had never even noticed became the only person who truly honored my life. If you'd met me 20 years ago, you probably would have called me lucky. I owned Bennett Hardware, a neighborhood store just outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy. No giant warehouse. No chain stores. Just a place where people came for nails, paint, lawn equipment, and advice they trusted. My wife, Helen, used to joke that half the town visited the store even when they didn't need anything. "They come to see you," she'd say. "They come because you talk too much." She wasn't wrong. I loved people. I remembered birthdays. I remembered children's names. If someone's roof leaked during a storm, I'd load supplies into my truck before sunrise and help patch it myself. Money mattered, but reputation mattered more. Helen understood that better than anyone. We'd met in college when I accidentally spilled coffee across her economics textbook. Instead of getting angry, she smiled and said, "Well, now you owe me another one." 46 years later, I still joked that buying that textbook was the best investment I'd ever made. Together, we raised 3 children. Daniel was the oldest. Smart, confident, always chasing bigger opportunities. Melissa came next. Creative, outgoing. She could convince almost anyone of almost anything. Our youngest, Ryan, was quiet, sensitive, the kind of kid who rescued injured birds and cried when old dogs died in movies. Back then, I would have sworn all 3 of them had good hearts. Life has a way of testing hearts in ways success never does. Helen passed away after a short illness when the kids were already adults. The house changed overnight. Silence moved into every room. I kept expecting to hear her humming while watering the flowers. I'd still buy her favorite tea without thinking. Sometimes I'd catch myself talking out loud because I'd forgotten she wasn't there to answer. People tell you grief gets smaller. It doesn't. You just learn how to carry it. The kids visited often during that first year. At least, I thought they were visiting for me. Looking back now, I realize many of those visits ended with conversations about money. "Dad, you should sell the store. Dad, this neighborhood is changing. Dad, you deserve to enjoy retirement." At first, it sounded caring. Eventually, it sounded rehearsed. I retired anyway. Not because they convinced me, because my knees hurt. My back complained every morning, and younger workers deserved their chance. Selling the hardware store gave me enough money to live comfortably. I paid off every debt. I invested carefully. The house was fully mine. No mortgage, no financial worries. I believed I'd earned a peaceful life. Instead, I slowly became something else. An Essel. Every holiday dinner somehow turned into financial advice. "Dad, have you thought about downsizing? You don't need such a big place. The market's perfect right now. We're only thinking about what's best for you." Funny thing about people who say they're only thinking about you. They're usually thinking about themselves. The first crack appeared one Thanksgiving. I'd spent 2 days cooking. The turkey came out perfectly. The mashed potatoes were exactly the way Helen used to make them. Everyone praised the food. Then Daniel looked around the dining room. "You know what this place would be worth if someone remodeled it?" Melissa immediately opened a real estate app on her phone. Ryan stayed quiet. I waited for someone to ask about the family recipes. Nobody did. Instead, they debated kitchen renovations while eating the meal their mother had taught me to cook. I cleaned the dishes alone that night. Standing at the sink, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked older than I remembered. Not because of wrinkles, because loneliness ages a person faster than time. Months later, I hired a part-time handyman named Eddie. He was 28, always smiling, always early. He fixed loose gutters, trimmed trees, replaced porch lights. Unlike my children, he never checked the value of my furniture with his eyes. He'd finish a job, accept his payment, and ask if I needed anything else. One afternoon, he noticed me struggling to move boxes into the garage. "You should have called me. I didn't want to bother you." He laughed. Helping people isn't bothering me. Simple words. But after months of conversations about property values and investment portfolios, kindness sounded almost foreign. Eddie started stopping by every Friday afternoon. Sometimes he'd fix something. Sometimes we'd just drink coffee on the porch. He talked about his daughter, Lily. She was 6, obsessed with dinosaurs. Apparently, she insisted that every chicken nugget was secretly a tiny T-Rex. The stories made me laugh harder than I'd laughed in years. Eventually, Lily started visiting too. She'd run through the backyard chasing butterflies while Eddie worked. One day, she found Helen's old wind chime hanging beside the porch. "It's singing," she whispered. I smiled. My wife used to say the same thing. What was she like? Children ask questions adults forget to ask. I spent an hour telling Lily about Helen. She listened, like every word mattered. When I finished, she hugged me without warning. "You miss her. Every day. My mommy says when we love people, they're never really gone." 6-year-olds don't know they're capable of healing people. Adults usually forget. That evening, Daniel called. "Dad, I heard you've got workers hanging around your property a lot." "It's just Eddie. You should be careful." "Careful of what?" "You never know people's intentions." The irony almost made me laugh. The only person who'd shown genuine concern in months was apparently the dangerous one. The people discussing my estate over holiday dinners considered themselves trustworthy. I let it go. Families deserve patience. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Then came my 75th birthday. I decided not to organize anything. I figured if the kids wanted to celebrate, they'd plan something. Danielle sent un texte. Busy with work. Melissa mailed an expensive bottle of wine. Ryan called from another state and promised he'd visit soon. I spent that birthday eating pie with Eddie and Lily on my back porch. Lily made me a birthday card using glitter, crayons, and enough stickers to decorate an entire classroom. Across the front, she'd written in oversized letters, "To my friend, Mr. Arthur." Not Grandpa. Not Sir. Friend. I framed it. My own children never noticed it hanging in the hallway. Around that same time, I started sorting through old boxes in the attic. That's where I found the photograph of Thomas. One picture, one memory, one promise I had never forgotten. Thomas Walker wasn't related to me. We met when we were 19, broke and working overnight shifts at a roadside diner. He'd grown up in foster homes. I grew up with parents who loved me. He used to joke that I should stop complaining because I'd won the family lottery. He wasn't bitter, just honest. When Helen and I got married, Thomas stood beside me as my best man. When Daniel was born, Thomas was the first visitor at the hospital. He brought a tiny baseball glove, saying every kid deserved impossible dreams. Life scattered us eventually. Jobs, marriage, different states. Then one winter, I got the phone call. Thomas had been killed in a highway accident during an ice storm. No wife, no children, no parents left alive. Just a few coworkers at his funeral. I stood beside his grave almost completely alone. Before they lowered the casket, I made him a promise. I won't let the world forget you. For years, I kept that promise quietly. Every Christmas, I donate to youth shelters in his name. Every birthday, I drive out to the cemetery. Eventually, age made those trips harder. My heart wasn't as strong anymore. That's when I wrote my final wish. It wasn't complicated. When my time came, I wanted my old blue pickup truck, the one Thomas and I had rebuilt together when we were young, to go to someone who truly needed it, someone chosen by the local youth shelter that carried on the kind of work Thomas cared about. Not because the truck was valuable. It wasn't. It had dents, faded paint, and more memories than horsepower. But inside the glove compartment was a handwritten letter explaining who Thomas was, why he mattered, and why kindness should never disappear just because someone leaves this world. I also asked that, on the anniversary of my passing, someone drive that truck to Thomas's grave one last time. That was it. No fortune, no complicated conditions. Just one final promise kept between two friends. When I showed the document to my children a few weeks later, they barely looked at the letter itself. Daniel frowned. So, you're giving away an asset? Melissa sighed. Honestly, Dad, nobody's going to care about some old truck. Ryan stayed quiet, staring at the floor. I waited. I hoped one of them would ask who Thomas was. None of them did. Instead, Daniel folded the papers, slid them back across the table, and said words that would echo in my mind for months. We'll figure something out when the time comes. He smiled while saying it, but something in his eyes told me he had already decided my final wish didn't matter. And for the first time in my life, I began to wonder whether the people who shared my name would ever understand the promises that had shaped my heart.